just from scratch. The frontline cauldron is burning, our forces have routed the Russians, and in response, they're pushing forward in columns again. Kupiansk is on the line of fire. The enemy's downfall live on air. Flamingos heading to Moscow. Drones have closed off Russian airspace. Video. Total devastation at full force. The strike shook even the Kremlin. Putin resorts to threats, looks toward Myrnohrad, and pulls out a new nuclear toy. Trump enters the game, a fist of power straight at the dictator. Don't miss it. A new mega weapon from the West has made its way to Ukraine. A secret mission to protect Ukrainian skies. Britain and Germany are setting up workshops. The Balkans are taking matters into their own hands. At this moment, Moscow is brought to its knees. All this in our episode of Hell Point. Right now, the whole truth about Kupiansk. Putin's soldiers have outsmarted the dictator. There is no encirclement. The enemy is stuck. The Ukrainian armed forces counteroffensive has begun with renewed strength. Now our troops are preparing to strike the enemy with deadly force. These very moments are decisive battles. The scenario devised by Russian generals called Bakhmut 2.0 has officially failed. The confrontation continues. This is a real frontline cauldron with a special place reserved for the enemy. All attempts to escape are futile. More details about how our steel lions are holding the defense at the hottest section of the front in the report coming up in just a moment.
The battles for control over the city of Kupiansk, a major transportation hub in the Kharkiv region, are ongoing.
The situation in Kupiansk continues to remain quite difficult and challenging, but these days our forces on the ground have significantly more control over the area. We continue to defend our positions.
Against this backdrop, Russian propaganda has once again released another batch of fake news. The bunker dweller claimed that Ukrainian troops in Kupiansk are surrounded and blocked.
In the city of Kupiansk and in the city of Krasnoarmeysk, the enemy has found itself blocked and surrounded. By the way, I discussed this issue with the commanders of the respective groups. They are not against it, Freyander, and they are not opposed to allowing representatives of the media, foreign journalists and Ukrainian journalists, into the encircled zones of the enemy, so that they can go in and see with their own eyes exactly what is happening there, observe for themselves the true and current condition of the encircled Ukrainian troops, and so that the political leadership of Ukraine can make the most appropriate and well-considered decisions regarding the fate and well-being of their citizens and their servicemen.
But these statements have nothing to do with reality. This is the painfully familiar old Kremlin tactic, media blackmail, and an attempt to demoralize Ukrainian society.
As of today, I believe the current situation has stabilized, and I sincerely hope that our dedicated security and defense forces will be able to ensure that Kupiansk is not captured.
In reality, this is not an encirclement, but rather intense local fighting.
The main direction of the occupiers' attack is not towards Kupiansk itself, but towards Kupiansk-Vuzlovi. The occupiers' plans include the possibility of establishing control over this key railway station.
As of October 30th, Ukrainian forces maintain control over most of Kupiansk and the key transportation hubs. Russian occupiers have entrenched themselves in small groups on the northern outskirts of the city and in the western part, creating a foothold for further attempts at an offensive.
In other words, they are carefully trying to modify and adjust their tactics and strategy of combat operations in urban environments. It is fundamentally different from the tactics used in Bakhmut 2.5 years ago, when the occupiers deployed a large amount of armored vehicles and accordingly the so-called meat grinder assault tactics to establish control over this settlement.
The main threat remains the northern direction and the enemy's attempts to break through to the Kharkiv-Kupiansk-Svatove highway. This route is vital for supplying Ukrainian units on the eastern bank of the Oskil River. From the south and east, Russian forces have been unable to approach the city. The main supply route for the armed forces of Ukraine remains through the Kupiansk-Uzlovyi railway station and the embankment dam across the Oskil. The dam is periodically subjected to enemy airstrikes, but it remains operational, while pontoon crossings serve as backup routes.
So the main goal and strategic objective of the occupiers is not to advance deeper into Kharkiv region, but to repeat the scenario of 2022, when the Izium group of occupiers was considered one of the most combat capable and aimed for the operational encirclement of Ukrainian units precisely in the area of the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. That is the main goal. In other words, the occupiers' strategic objective is to establish full control over the territory of Donetsk region.
But the enemy has run into the tough defense of the Ukrainian armed forces. Counterattacks by Ukrainian troops are holding back the Russian advance.
At the moment, Ukraine's defense forces are conducting counter-sabotage operations to prevent Russian occupiers from penetrating further into the urban area and from gaining direct control over Kupiansk-Buzlovyi.
Kupiansk is not just another point on the map. It is a symbol of resilience, endurance, and military stamina. The Russian army is trying to take the city by attrition, but the Ukrainian defense is holding strong.
No matter how much the Kremlin tries to present wishful thinking as reality, the truth is on the side of those who defend their home and, step by step, drive the enemy out of Ukrainian land. Flamingo to Moscow and Polyanitsia to Petersburg. The deep strikes of the Ukrainian armed forces are reaching a new level. Our forces are smashing Russia, obliterating the enemy's high-value targets. Drones are taking control of Russia's deep rear, driving Putin completely insane. It's hard to believe. A catastrophe has struck enemy territory. A blackout is breaking out nearby. The Kremlin throws up its hands, and Kyiv openly says, "This is not yet the full deadly force we can unleash." The heart of Russia is in the crosshairs. When can we expect breaking news about this? The answer to this question is coming up in the report in just a moment.
Distances of hundreds or even thousands of kilometers are no obstacle for Ukrainian weaponry. Russian oil refineries.
Well, that's all clear, a refinery. That's obvious even without saying it.
Key facilities of the military-industrial complex and the Russian war machine.
With fire, a lot of it.
This is a total nightmare. Damn, it's getting crazy.
And recently, in response to the shelling of Ukraine's critical infrastructure, Russian critical infrastructure has also come under the sights of the Ukrainian armed forces.
No way. No way, I can't believe it.
Barry, look.
Where are we? Now that's an attraction.
When the Kremlin threatens Ukrainians with a blackout, Russians should also prepare for a cold and difficult winter.
If they threaten a blackout, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, then the Kremlin should know that there will be a blackout in the capital of Russia as well.
For a long time, Western allies restricted Ukraine's ability to strike deep into Russian territory, as a result of which Ukraine expanded its own long-range arsenal. According to the head of Ukrainian intelligence, Kirilo Budanov, today 99% of strikes on Russian oil refineries are carried out with Ukrainian weapons.
At the time when all this began, when they said we were fighting with one hand tied behind our back, I tend to agree with you that this is the correct interpretation of what was happening at the time. But now we have our own production. Yes, we want more, of course, we always want more, but it exists. And it is precisely our domestic production that has allowed us to use our forces and resources the way we see fit.
The Kremlin understands only the language of force. The best argument in any negotiations with Moscow is a powerful Ukrainian army and defense industry, particularly our own production of long-range drones and missiles, with which Ukraine regularly strikes targets in Russia located 1,000 or more kilometers from the front line.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, we need to learn not only to effectively repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to disrupt and suppress their logistics and aviation. That's why it became necessary. And I'm not even mentioning the need to strike at enterprises of the military-industrial complex and the energy system of Russia.
This is the city of Belgorod, and basically at this moment there's absolutely no electricity available anywhere at all in Belgorod right now.
If the simplest drones to manufacture are used for strikes on Russian oil refineries, jet-powered drones like Polyanitsia, Peklo and Bars are better suited for targeting military-industrial complex facilities. Their technical specifications are not disclosed. Experts suggest that the range of these jet-powered drones is between 500 and 700 kilometers. Their main advantage is the cost compared to their cruise missile counterparts.
These are two cities that are most heavily protected by the air defense systems of the Russian Federation, such as Moscow and Leningrad. Drones have reached there, and every evening they could potentially reach again. And I believe, well, I would really like, let me put it this way, for this to happen systematically,
For dessert for the occupiers, Ukrainian long-range missiles, the Long Neptune and the Flamingo, with ranges of 1,000 and 3,000 kilometers respectively. The Ukrainian Pink Bird, in addition to its enormous range, impresses with a warhead weight of about 1,000 kilograms.
Usually the warhead of a modern cruise missile weighs 450, at most 500 kilograms. As a rule, almost all missiles have a warhead of 450 kilograms. So what does a one-ton warhead provide? When it hits a target, for example, an industrial facility, 2 such missiles will completely disable it for at least a year. That is, there will be a single crater about 20 meters in diameter.
Russian terrorists who are shelling Ukrainian cities must understand, a mirror response will definitely come.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Urgent. Putin has set his sights on yet another Ukrainian city. The boiling point on the front line has been reached. The dictator's army is breathing fire, has tasted our birch porridge, and is once again choking with rage. The Kremlin gives the order, brings out a new nuclear toy, and believes it can succeed. However, here's the catch. Trump slammed his fist and shattered all of Moscow's resolve. The Poseidon tests are called off on command. America's mega weapon is already aimed at the terrorist country. One step and there will be an explosion. Don't miss all the details in the upcoming report. The tension on the front line is rising. The most difficult situation remains in the Pokrovsk direction, where the intensity of fighting is the highest. A large number of occupiers are concentrated there, and the Russians are trying to gain a foothold by any means.
The main tactic of the Russian, that is, small assault groups, is to try to create an operational encirclement of Ukraine's defense forces directly in Pokrovsk itself. At the moment, the actual line of contact is the key defensive positions of Ukraine's defense forces, the so-called citadel. Despite the extremely difficult situation, Ukraine's defense forces are conducting successful counteroffensive actions, and at present, the area under the control of Ukraine's defense forces has increased to 200 square kilometers.
Fierce fighting continues in the Kupiansk area of Kharkiv region. The occupiers are trying to gain a foothold in the northern part of the city, but there is no question of Ukrainian troops being encircled. The situation in Myrnohrad and its outskirts is also fully controlled by the armed forces of Ukraine.
At the moment, the main efforts of the occupiers are not focused on blocking the Ukrainian defense forces directly in Kupiansk, but rather on trying to break through to the Kupyansk railway junction. The occupiers need control over this key railway station in order to use the short logistics route from the territory of the Russian Federation and the occupied areas of Luhansk region to form a strike group, whose goal will be to advance along the Oskil River towards the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk agglomeration. Using the territory of the mining administration, the occupiers are trying to intensify their offensive towards Myrnohrad as well. This area itself is being used to amass assault groups and accordingly as a concentration point for UAV operators. There is absolutely no reason to talk about an operational encirclement of the defense forces in the Myrnohrad direction.
Meanwhile, Putin has come out with a new scare tactic. The bunker dweller continues to talk about the successful tests of Russia's so-called wonder weapon.
It's an underwater, unmanned underwater device called Poseidon, also with a nuclear power unit. For the first time, we managed not only to launch it from the carrier submarine using the starting engine, but also to start up the nuclear power unit.
But Putin did not provide any evidence of the tests, no information about the location, route, duration, or any other details.
Neither the Poseidon nor, accordingly, the Burevestnik have been put into serial production or placed on combat duty. Therefore, there is absolutely no reason to talk about any threat from these mythological Russian Wunderwaffe to NATO or directly to the United States.
But despite this, the ALCO president Medvedev called the Poseidon a doomsday weapon and threatened Belgium with a nuclear strike. Let us recall that the Belgian Minister of Defense stated that if Russia strikes the capital, NATO members will level Moscow to the ground.
These are nothing more than information dumps, which Western allies have over time stopped reacting to. And the reaction of the Russian Federation's ambassador to Belgium to the official statement made by that country's defense minister is quite telling, as it clearly demonstrates complete confusion and a notable lack of preparedness for such a tough and unequivocal statement from one of the NATO bloc members.
Against the backdrop of the Kremlin dictator's loud statements, Donald Trump has moved to action. The American president has instructed the Pentagon to resume nuclear weapons testing.
On the nuclear weapons tests of the United States, this is a tough military response by the country and President Trump to such information dumps from the Russian Federation. Moreover, Trump made a very tough statement that the United States possesses the world's leading nuclear capability. Russia is in second place and China is conditionally third.
At the same time, the US has begun a large-scale reduction of its military presence in Eastern Europe.
On the one hand, by announcing such plans during the rotation period, let me emphasize once again, the United States is strengthening its nuclear presence in European countries. Let me emphasize again, this includes the redeployment of nuclear arsenals to the United Kingdom, the redeployment of nuclear submarines, and the presence of an American aircraft carrier in Denmark's territorial waters. In other words, all of this actually points to a strengthening, not a reduction, of the US military presence right near the borders of the Russian Federation.
And after the destruction of the Belgorod reservoir, the occupiers have to adjust their plans, which gives Ukraine the opportunity to strengthen its defenses.
The strike on the Belgorod reservoir had two objectives. The first objective is military, specifically to disrupt the logistics of the Russian occupation army, both directly on the territory of the Russian Federation, meaning the units of the Russian army involved in active combat operations in the Kursk region, the Lushkovsky and Tayuchinsky districts, and accordingly the units of the occupation army engaged in combat operations in the Volchansk direction. But in my opinion, the main significance is political. It's a signal to the United States.
And despite UN sanctions, Iran could have intensified the revival of its ballistic missile program.
Breaking news. Octopus anti-aircraft drones are breaking through. Britain is boosting Ukraine's air defense. The factories are running at full capacity. With every drone produced, the Kremlin's power falls apart like a puzzle. 5,000 missiles are ready at the starting line. Shock. Germany is stepping up too. Now Ukraine's skies are controlled by its partners. An air defense shield is being built right at this moment. And that's not all. What decisive steps are the Allies taking, publicly sweeping away Moscow's grandeur? More on this in just a moment.
Russia is ramping up strikes on Ukraine's energy system and changing its attack tactics. Moscow is launching hundreds of drones capable of bypassing air defense systems and equipped with cameras for improved targeting.
Russia has turned strikes on Ukraine's energy infrastructure into a systematic operation aimed not just at temporarily damaging the grid, but at destroying the viability of large areas of the country ahead of winter. The goal of the attacks is to deprive regions of heat and electricity, undermine industry, provoke mass emigration, and create political pressure on Kyiv, writes The Economist.
In these conditions, air defense becomes critically important. But this year, Western partners are acting proactively, strengthening Ukraine's skies and energy system before the onset of cold weather.
We are not just now starting preparations for this winter season. We began preparations back at the end of the last winter season.
As early as November, the UK will begin serial production of Ukrainian Octopus air defense drones, a joint project between Kyiv and London, designed for the rapid protection of the skies from enemy drones and missiles.
Our Ukrainian friends will share their technologies and intellectual property with the United Kingdom, and in turn we will further develop them and produce them on a large scale so that we can supply Ukraine with thousands of interceptor drones every month, said Elkanes, Deputy Secretary of State for the Armed Forces in the British Parliament.
These drones will become part of a system called the Air Defense Shield. It will combine Western air defense systems such as Patriot, Iris-T, NASAMS, as well as new mobile units that Germany and other allies are providing to Ukraine before the start of winter. The first drones will be tested by Ukrainian military personnel, and if the trials are successful, production will be expanded, with some of the drones likely to be manufactured directly in Ukraine. At the same time, the UK government is expanding its multi-purpose missile production program. It is planned to deliver 5,000 units of this weapon to Ukraine to strengthen its air defense.
We are also announcing an expansion of the production program in the United Kingdom to provide Ukraine with 5,000 new multi-purpose missiles. This will create new jobs in Belfast and other cities, as well as strengthen Ukraine's air defense for the coming winter.
At the same time, European allies are increasing their support for Ukraine's energy sector. Germany and other NATO countries are mobilizing resources, from air defense missiles to support for the energy sector so that Ukraine can withstand the winter and resist attacks on critical infrastructure.
Germany has already paid 390 million euros. We agreed on another 30 million in the summer. But today I want to announce that we will invest an additional 30 million. Thus, we are providing 450 million euros. This money will make it possible to purchase the necessary technical equipment to save Ukraine.
In addition, EU countries are preparing a winter support package. To the 3 billion euros already provided, a new guarantee of 800 million has been added for the emergency purchase of gas. This was reported by the EU ambassador to Ukraine, Katerina Maternova. The assistance covers the repair of power grids, as well as the supply of generators and transformers.
We have also provided and continue to provide significant assistance in the energy sector, not only with generators for people and businesses, but also with transformer and compressor stations to help restore power grids, gas distribution networks, and compressors that supply gas from storage facilities that were damaged. We are also providing financial support to state enterprises and major energy companies for the repair of their equipment. We are also supplying more than 2 gigawatts of electricity per day.
Thus, support for Ukraine this winter is reaching a new level, from modern air defense systems to resilient energy supply. And whatever the Kremlin may be planning, Ukraine, together with its allies, is aiming not just for tactical success, but for strategic success, to withstand the cold, to preserve its strength, and to maintain its ability to defend itself.
Urgent actions by the Balkans could radically change the balance of power. Zagreb and Kosovo are sending military aid. The movement of columns of equipment is already reinforcing the support lines. Athens is preparing to transfer combat aircraft, which will significantly enhance Kyiv's air capabilities. The Balkans are forming a new center of influence that is capable of turning the situation in Ukraine's favor. This is just the beginning. All the details about further deliveries and their impact are coming up in the next segment.
Recently, Ukraine received a new significant package of military aid from Croatia. Ukraine and Croatia have also agreed on joint weapons production. Ukraine's Minister of Defense Denis Shmyhal and Croatia's Minister of Defense Ivan Anušić signed a joint letter of intent to deepen defense industrial cooperation.
He thanked Croatia for providing 13 military aid packages worth over 200 million euros. We expect the 14th aid package soon and the 15th by the end of this year. During the meeting, we also discussed joint participation in the SAVE mechanism and the possibility of Croatia joining the Pearl initiative. I am grateful for the consideration of this matter. Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
At the beginning of next year, a joint industrial forum for defense product manufacturers will be held. Croatia's greatest interest, of course, lies in the production of various drones, which have already revolutionized modern warfare. The Croatian side will also assist Ukraine with demining efforts.
He noted Croatia's role in the demining coalition. The experience of this friendly country is important for clearing our land. The Croatian company Dok-Ing has already delivered 69 demining machines and has started producing spare parts in Ukraine. Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Greece will soon deliver American-made M110A2 howitzers, 150,000 rounds of ammunition, and Zuni rockets to Ukraine. This military aid, with a total value of about 199 million euros, will be transferred to Ukraine through the Czech Republic. Also, under pressure from other NATO countries, Greece may sell part of its Mirage 2000 fighter jets.
Greece has already purchased 24 more modern Rafale fighter jets from France. Considering that technical support for the 2000 fighter jets will end in 2027, Greece is looking to get rid of the old ones. However, negotiations with India regarding the sale of these fighter jets have reached a deadlock. Other Balkan countries have also not found any interested buyers. Greece is negotiating with France to purchase another 6 to 12 Rafale fighter jets and is seeking a price reduction in exchange for selling part of its Mirage 2000 fleet.
Now Athens is negotiating with France to purchase another 6 or 12 Rafale jets and is negotiating for a lower price in exchange for selling part of its Mirage 2000 fleet. Currently, Greece has 25 such aircraft in service. The United States is putting pressure on the country to acquire more weapon systems as part of the priority list program for Ukraine's needs. Therefore, it is only a matter of time before Kyiv purchases part of the Mirage 2000 fleet from Athens. Even the partially recognized Republic of Kosovo is helping Ukraine. Pristina has announced the delivery of a new military aid package to Ukraine. The Balkan country is ready to help as much as it can. The details of the aid are not being disclosed. It is known that it includes mortar shells of various calibers, including 120mm, 60mm, and 81mm, military trucks, armored vehicles, and tactical vehicles.
We are firmly determined to provide comprehensive support to Ukraine in every aspect according to our conditions and capabilities. Ejup Makedonci, Minister of Defense of Kosovo.
The Minister of Defense of Kosovo recently shared an official video on social media showing the Kosovo security forces and the British Army training Ukrainian soldiers. Eastern European countries and the Balkans are actively assisting Ukraine with various types of weaponry and by conducting training sessions on their own territory. Such support clearly demonstrates their attitude toward the Russian world and Putin.
That's all from me for now. This was me, Darina Hutsakalo. Stay tuned for even more scorching news in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.